It's a visit with a person of high strangeness. We had a really, really hard winter. And in case you're wondering, it is almost the end of June, and we just now hit 60 and 70 degrees. For us Washingtonians, that won't surprise you because you lived through the whole thing. And for those of you that live in other places, how does one explain going from winter to summer in a week? Tomorrow is the solstice here. So some of us, I'm going to change the subject here. Some of us look at friendship as something that is consistent, it's always there, and people see each other all the time. Well, as it turns out, some of my friends, we see each other ever so often, and we just pick up where we left off a year, 2 or 3 earlier. So the next clip I'm going to show you is a woman named Carrie Houston. Oh, Carrie and I go back, I don't know, many years. And it's only occasionally that we have time periods where we see each other and we do things together. Well, here recently, she kind of popped back into my life. And she was finally willing to do an interview for you. And so I'm going to share that with you. And this is Carrie Houston. You've actually heard her sing. She is in a Great Adeline. It's like a barber shop, except it's female. So you've heard her sing before. And so, but I finally convinced her she had something she needed to share with you. So we're going to go to that insert, and I guess I'll see you after a while. In the meantime, I'm going to take a look at some things in here, and maybe I'll get back to you on that, okay? Yeah, look at this one. Isn't that pretty? Yeah. This is Miss Carrie Houston. Hi, Carrie.
Hello, Lil.
I've mentioned you often, you know, in the shows, and we heard you sing. And so today we're going to put a face on ya.
That's good.
So how you been?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Okay, now tell me, but every so many years you kind of fall out of the sky.
I don't like that term anymore now that I'm flying again.
Hey, that's right. That's not a good idea.
Yeah,
Okay, let's rephrase that. Yeah. Anyway, you just sort of re-enter my reality. How's that?
Yes, indeed. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I couldn't
I'm
say
here
drop.
again. I've shown up.
I couldn't say drop either. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Do drop in.
You do drop in, yeah. Okay, now tell me, where do we want to go first? The last time you reappeared was because you was trying to make some decisions. You had allowed me to put in the newsletter that you was the first female combat helicopter pilot.
Combat assault.
Assault pilot.
Combat assault. The unit that I was placed into was the 173rd Combat Assault Helicopter Company in Germany in 1977. And what I was told was that someone above the level of Department of the Army put me in that unit to find out if women could handle the role in a combat frontline unit. And I was in that unit in Germany for 3 years, in spite of the fact that the commander and the battalion commander, 5th Corps commander, did not want me there. So
in other words, they was trying to see could they stress you out. In reality, they did.
Oh, they really did. They really did. I presume they were looking at how to bring in equal rights for women and etc. I think they were being forced to have to deal with the issue, and having to put women. They had opened aviation to women, and my understanding is that I was the 18th to graduate from flight school, but the 13th warrant officer, as far as women are concerned in Army aviation. And I started by flying the Hueys on my first flight assignment, and then later in 1980 when I was assigned to Hunter Army Airfield in Savannah, Georgia. I went into finally into a role that I was supposed to have been in, which was to fly VIPs in Delta Company and 24th Aviation Battalion, and they offered. Actually, one of the other units, the assault unit, was being transitioned to the Blackhawks when they first got them. And I got moved over into that unit. So I was the first female warrant officer to fly Blackhawks, and I flew it in the combat assault role again because I had already flown combat assault for 3 years in Germany. Mm-hmm. And they couldn't keep me out. Exquisite aircraft. Extraordinary experience to fly that aircraft, and insisting on getting that transition pretty much finished my career 11 years short of retirement.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you want to explain that?
Okay. I did a lot of firsts when I was in the Army. It's kind of like the universe sent me in to play pioneer, and I wasn't exactly sure what it was that I was pioneering. At the time, I really looked at it more as a guinea pig instead of pioneer.
Uh-huh.
People who didn't live the life that I lived liked to put me into the pioneer role, but it definitely felt like guinea pig. Anyway, I got out of the service at the Army's request because they did not pass me. They passed me over for promotion twice to Chief Warrant Officer 3. So I had to get out. And there were quite a few people who purposefully did what it took in order to make sure that they put me out, as far as my officer efficiency reports, preventing me from getting the training that I needed in order to be qualified to get my promotion. So there was an enormous amount of harassment. There was an enormous amount of discrimination. The stress levels were horrendous, and there was no escape from them. Having been born in 1956, I was walking between two worlds. I was initially raised to be looking at having a husband and children and a white picket fence, and everything cut loose in the 60s, and the rules started to change.
And you got a double-bladed helicopter.
Yeah, and I ended up in a world that I was not raised to know how to prepare myself for, mm-hmm. and with a strong personality and a strong mechanical mind. Off I went out into the universe, and I used to describe it as bouncing off the walls. I could see it as though the world of men was over here and the world of women was here, and I just kept bouncing around in the gray shades between the two. The world that men traditionally had ownership of, I was more drawn to the job roles, the things that interested me, the adventure that was there, versus the women's roles that at that point you had the old establishment of being a wife and a mother, and although I wanted children, I didn't want to be held down into just that. I knew I was intelligent, I knew I had a good mind, and I wanted to go out and use it, and didn't know where I belonged. So I although I didn't realize that I was being guided at the time, I knew I was going where I was supposed to go, even though I didn't know why I was going there. And that led me into the Army. It led me into aviation. It led me into the role of the first woman into a combat assault unit. It led me into yet the second combat assault unit, and into getting the Blackhawks as an aircraft that I transitioned into. Mm-hmm. And the first female warrant officer to be put out for non-promotion. my husband and I went to Germany on his tour after I got out. And
so all this time you had a husband, right?
No. Actually, I had my first marriage. I got married the day before I entered flight school in 1977.
Oh, okay.
And we were apart almost half of that first year of our marriage because I was in flight school and I wasn't allowed to go home. I went to Germany before he did, and he followed me over there, and the marriage fell apart pretty quick at that point. So I was separated from him. I had to get back to the United States in order to be able to get a divorce. And I got to Savannah, and before I even signed in at my post, I went past an attorney's office, pulled in, and asked for assistance in getting a divorce, and was told I had to wait. I had to establish residency. That was August of 1980, and my first husband, Rocky, found out that psychically found out that I was doing what it took to prevent him from finding me, and he committed suicide in November of that year. I didn't remarry until 1984, a month before I got out of the service. I married Doc. He's still my current husband.
You still got him, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's fast forward for a minute.
Okay.
Okay. So you had to leave the military, and one of the reasons you re-entered my reality here recently was you wanted to find yourself again.
Yes.
And so we did some readings, and we discovered that you didn't get all your benefits through the reading. Is that correct?
Yes. I qualified for VA disability. The diagnosis that I was given when I first was finally allowed to be seen at the VA, that's another story. Anyway, when I finally got to be seen at the VA hospital up there, I was diagnosed with severe chronic depression, dysthymia, which is a constant undercurrent of depression in your life, and post-traumatic stress disorder and obsessive compulsive disorder. I count things is where my obsessive compulsive disorder. Unfortunately, my obsessive compulsive disorder is not for cleaning the house.
Yeah, no. Hey, we do universal stuff. We don't have time for that. Yeah, we don't do that. Yeah.
No sense cleaning the house. Oh.
Yeah, we count people that we connect to and stuff like that.
I count lots of things, but I don't necessarily clean them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the post-traumatic stress disorder that diagnosis was a key that we hadn't found before. I had gotten a diagnosis of depression in '87. And they put me on Prozac, which truly helped.
Did it?
It really, really helped because it stopped the noise in my head for about 2 weeks and gave me a break. But it only took me to a certain point, and it somewhat, the best way to describe it was that it somewhat swaddled me like I was in an aspirin bottle stuffed with cotton, so that I was safe, but I was confined. I couldn't grow above where the safety of the drug was. And I know that Universe put the proper psychiatrist in my life. His name is Dr. Ball down in Santa Rosa, California. And the man told me something that I don't think many people have heard that have gone in for mental health issues for help, is that the medication wasn't there to fix me. It was to alter my blood chemistry, my brain chemistry, enough so that I could learn to think differently. That the drug won't fix you, but it will give you the ability or the opportunity to start changing how you think, because you get into a closed loop in your thinking.
Wow. Oops.
The brain chemistry keeps you in the loop. And they're not sure whether it's the thinking that got you into the loop and then the brain chemistry follows and keeps the door closed, or the brain chemistry gets you into the loop and the thinking keeps you locked in. But one of the things has to change for the other to change. So the medication gives you the opportunity to change it if someone tells you that that's all it's there for. It's not the fix. It will not fix it. You have to then do the work. But you have the ability to then.
Yeah, see, I just wrote an article on personality disorder, and one of the things I put in there, that there is no drug to fix it.
Correct.
Because it takes long-term skills to maneuver.
Correct.
Right, yeah, see, because a lot of times they think that you take a pill and that's the end of it. It's not. You could really get scrambled when you do that.
Right. Well, and you did your article on multiple personality disorder. On the line of disorders, post-traumatic stress disorder is on the same branch.
Same branch.
It's on the same branch as multiple personality disorder. And the way I had it explained to me was that it's a dissociative disorder. I know that I dissociated as a child because of some of the things that were happening to me. I know that as a teen, I got some recall on some of the traumas that had occurred when I was a child. That's when I first realized that I had kind of blocked out a chunk of my life. Starting to deal with that, and then more of life starts happening. Well, I already knew how to dissociate, so I dissociated out of some of that stuff. And I can remember going through a pregnancy as a teenager that, of course, I wasn't looking to have. And there was this odd date rape thing that occurred in and around the same time frame. I can remember having to go through this whole pregnancy, and I watched it. I watched me go through it as though I was up in the left-hand corner of the room and watching my body eat, talk with my grandparents, go to the doctor, but I had no control over it. It was as though I was tucked up in the corner of the room where I was safe, even though at the same time I was looking out of my own eyeballs in my body. It was a very odd experience, and I knew I was going through it, and I had no name for it. And it didn't occur to me to tell anybody. But that's a dissociative.
Yeah.
Now, what was explained to me is that the more trauma that happens to someone who learns how to dissociate as a child, the farther out this branch of dissociative disorders they get, which is why I've ended up with post-traumatic stress disorder. If I had learned to cope as a child instead of survive, I wouldn't have post-traumatic stress disorder. I might have severe reaction to one major incident, but I'd have learned how to cope through other difficulties. Now, with multiple personality disorders, what it was explained to me is that the trauma is more severe and more long-lasting at a very young age, and you create different personalities as a survival skill in order to handle it. So you compartmentalizes
your brain.
the traumas.
Yeah.
So this little person with this name handles this kind of trauma.
Thing, yeah.
And the strong one with another name handles this kind of. This one fights back. I didn't go. It didn't start early. It didn't start that early with me. It wasn't as severe, so I only have gone so far out. What compounded problems for me was the very focused assaults on my mental and emotional capacities. They so disliked having a woman in the role that I was in that it was a mental and emotional and psychological and energetic rape at all times. It was a walking nightmare, and I ended up with what I knew at the time I called justifiable paranoia.
I want to say something here. Again, this came about through a reading I did for a person that went double back on the VA and looked into some things, and as a result of that, a landmark case was established where if you suffered a condition or an illness before they accepted you in on the outcome end, they had to be liable for, you know, as you was before, and that's, and here again, just imagine, in readings, these things come to the forefront, and I think it's because of that you were able to double back. Is that it?
Yes, I have. I have gone back to the VA. When I went to the VA initially and applied, I was actually being seen at VA for 3 years, I believe, before I had the courage to apply for disability. One of the things that seems to be very prominently misunderstood by female veterans, women who have served in the United States military are veterans, is that we don't know that. We do not understand that we are veterans too.
Oh, I knew that. I wasn't even in the army.
The women do not. They're not really. I don't know how it is that we don't understand that we're veterans, and therefore we don't understand that veterans benefits are for us too.
Oh wow!
It's, and I've spoken to a service representative that said that they're having this problem. They're seeing more and more of it, that the women don't understand that.
Oh wow!
The women don't understand they've earned the right. They've earned to be taken care of by this country for what they've done for it. And it's really shameful.
Yeah.
I don't know how they're treating the women right now. I know that for myself, one of the problems that I've had that is continuing is that the assault on my beingness as a woman, as a female of the human race, was taught to me to be so wrong that I could not identify any rightness about myself. And I'm still fighting that. It goes to every relationship you have, whether it's a close, intimate relationship with a husband, or a friend, or your daughter, or your grandchildren, your brothers, your mother, your father, or the guy at the gas station. It affects every relationship, how you view yourself as a part of the world, when you're attacked so viciously and so purposefully for having been born female. That being present in the military when I was in the roles that I was wrong by everyone's standard, and I lost my ability to know that I was okay by me saying so. I finally gave in to what I consider to be majority rules. Apparently they knew something, I thought, since they all had an opinion that agreed. I was the odd man out. I was the only one that thought I was a fine person with good character and value, and everyone disagreed. And I lost my ability to trust my own internal messages, and I started to believe their messages. And it only was partially alleviated when I was given when I went through the first round to apply for VA disability. I got a 70% rating for the post-traumatic stress disorder, and they only gave me a 20% rating on my back and a 30% rating for loss of body parts, which is part of the trauma that I went through. The military lied to me and told me that I had invasive cancer. And I'd had a cone biopsy done for cervical cancer, And they convinced me that I had invasive cancer, and if I didn't have a hysterectomy that I'd die of cancer within 5 years. And it wasn't until after I lost my womb that the pathologist came up from the lab downstairs and said, "Why did you have a hysterectomy? It's
I want to
perfectly
add
normal."
something to that. Now, I wasn't in the military per se, but I was an army wife,
Uh-huh.
and essentially the same thing happened. I was 23.
I was 23 as well.
Yeah, that must have been a magical year, huh?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
if I hadn't fought, they'd have taken my ovaries too and put me into menopause at 23 years old.
Yeah.
But I lost the ability to have children
Now tell me.
because of the military and their attitude towards women.
Now I have a young family member, female, that wants to join the Air Force. What do you say to her?
The Air Force does take much better care of its personnel than in the other branches. At this point, with what's going on politically in the world and how they're using the military, if I were to go into any branch, the only one I would even consider is the Air Force, and I would seriously consider finding something else to do with your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. It won't be long until the Air Force is used like cannon fodder, like the Army and the Marines, and your life is not worth what they're going to pay you.
Yeah. Okay, let's take a pause on that subject for a minute.
Okay.
And then we might get back to it, I don't know yet. But here's the thing. We had dinner together on Father's Day.
Yes.
We did the man thing today. And because you're going on the
Well,
road.
we're both wearing pants.
Yeah, well, yeah. And you're going on the road. So which entails what? Now tell me about that.
Well, I'm going on.
Let me stop for just a minute.
Okay.
Let me say one more thing. When I get scrambled, after, bureaucratic type things,
Right.
going on a trip is the only way I can find myself. Is that what you're doing?
It could be. I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen on this journey. Part of it's a road trip, and quite a bit of it actually I think is going to land in the journey category.
Mm-hmm.
Where one leaves off and the other starts, I'm not exactly sure.
Now,
but I know I'm being guided to go.
When the people with you start irritating, and upsetting you,
Right.
just please say to yourself, it's not about me, I'm just the driver.
Yes.
Because a lot of times the universe throws people at us so they can learn something, but we experience all their crap because we are the driver.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I have my brother, who's 18 months younger than I, is going to be on this journey. And I know for him, he may think that he's going on a car trip, but he's going on a journey.
On a journey,
And big sister's the driver.
yeah. But it gets real. Well, you know some of my journeys, and
Yes.
Oh man, we came so close to death, I don't know how many times.
Yes.
But it's always about the other person learning something,
Yes.
Mostly.
My brother Rex is moving out of the plain world and into the fantastic. And he has been learning spiritual principles, and this will be the first opportunity to really leave the life that he's been living and just kind of free float and learn how to work with guidance. One of my close friends has been down there helping him for the last few years and helping him to awaken. So he's been catching on, but the type of gifts that she has are not the type of gifts that are born in my family.
Now let me ask you this, back to the military for a minute.
Yeah.
Looking back on it, do you think the military set you up for the spiritual part of you, or was it the spiritual that required you to be that three-dimensional?
I didn't know it at the time. Really did not know it at the time. I didn't have any background that would help me to understand the spiritual world. Only that from the time that I was 7 when my great-grandmother died, my Nana, I have been drawn to the metaphysical world because I've always wanted to be able to get back to her since she passed. And I didn't understand why I had such a strong connection to her. All I knew was that I had a stronger connection than my siblings did. There were 4 of us. And there was a very strong connection between she and I was very devastated when she passed. I felt like I had been abandoned. Well, I've learned an awful lot metaphysically and spiritually since that time, but not till after I got out of the Army. The Army was a requirement. There are things that I learned in there that I had to know.
Okay.
And had I had more metaphysical knowledge, I wouldn't have gone in there.
Right. Okay. That answered my question. Yeah.
I would not have gone there because if I'd had more upfront metaphysical knowledge, I'd have known what I was in for, and I'd have dodged that bullet.
Yeah.
But there are skills, there are things that I know about myself. In having reopened my VA case to increase my, for anybody who might have been adding before, the military and the VA and the government don't add the way the rest of us were taught to use math. So in actuality, I only have 80%. They added 70, 30, and 20, and they came up with 80. No matter what we come up with.
Maybe they're obsessed with counting too, huh?
It could be why we're in so much financial trouble in this world. They don't know how to count. So I'm not at a full 100% rating. And if at this point I were to start working, even a part-time job, I'd lose my medical benefits.
That's it.
Whether the VA is the greatest medical place in the world or not, it's all I've got. So I've gone back in, requesting that my VA rating be increased, and I should have, could have, would have asked for the increase back when I first initially went in for my rating, except that anytime someone who has emotional issues or any sort of a disability, to go in and fight for that disability so rattles your cage that I couldn't face turning around and fighting that amount and getting it increased to where it should have been in the first place. Whereas my husband, when he went in and applied for disability, they gave him 100% right off the bat, no argument. Here I am 14 years later, and I'm going in to have it moved up to where it should have been in the first place. To have metaphysical understandings and spiritual knowledge and guidance and be drawn, asked, or need to go in and argue for a disability, it goes so against my grain, it goes so against the knowledge that I have, and it pulls you out of your spirituality and your connection and slams you down into the emotional world. There are so many things that I've needed to have gotten done in the last 6 months that I could not do because I couldn't focus. And until this is complete, I'm still not going to be able to focus. I can't get out of the emotions.
So go on a trip. That's what I do.
I can, when I drive, long distance driving, I'm okay with the silence, or I'm okay with listening to CDs that I need to listen to, or listening to a song over and over again to get the message of it. So I can receive guidance very well. There's a place that you kind of go into trance, especially if you're comfortable in driving, and I'm very comfortable handling machinery. I love to drive. I love to fly. You just can't pack as much stuff into a little airplane as you can into a minivan.
Can I tell a little airplane story?
Yeah.
Okay. we wanted to take some aerials for the show, and so Carrie said, okay, I'll take you flying. Well, she caught me right in the middle of me writing the article, Oops, who goes there? And I caught myself, I was good. I said no, because some of my people don't like to fly. They would have jumped out of the airplane without a parachute. So.
Which would really have been a bad day.
Would not have been good. So anyway, the article is on my website, highstrangeness.tv, and it's also on MySpace. It's called I Hear Hoops, Who Goes There? Not good. Yeah.
No, taking Lilian up to go take some pretty pictures would be really, really nice to have one of her people have all of them jump out. Would not be
good. Yeah, so not good.
I'd have a hard time explaining that to the FAA.
Yeah, did have been on YouTube.
Lilian, come back!
Yeah. So all y'all.
Everybody, back on the plane. Back on the plane.
God. Okay. Wow, we went from the depth of your soul to that. In order to summarize it, how do you summarize this? I don't know.
Oh my.
Is it advice or knowledge or just summarize it? However it comes to you.
I know that in the one of the last questions you asked about whether it was the metaphysics first or the army. What I know is, and I've learned from experience and being able to sense truth, is that every experience you have in your life is leading you to something. That your ability to receive and act on guidance is what will take you to grand adventures, whether they feel like a grand adventure at the moment or a disaster, and being able to reframe them later on and get what the learning was. I know that there is very little in this world that I'm actually afraid of. I'm not afraid to die. I have been so deep into depression, yet not pulled the plug on myself, and it's not for lack of... Well, it's not because I was afraid of where I would be going. I don't have a fear of that, even before I had an understanding of what was going to be. It's that there's something I'm here for, and I'm not done with it yet. And everything that comes to me, so much of what I've gone through when I'm helping someone else, I've already been in it or close enough that I can relate to it. And it doesn't fear me, and it doesn't cause fear within me, and I can help that person find a way out of their fear and out of their misunderstanding of what it was that they went through. There is no thing that is meant to hurt us. It's only our perception that it is pain. You cannot hurt my soul. You cannot hurt my spirit. My body-mind has a different understanding about the whole thing, and learning how to get everything congruent within self so that you can work with your higher self all in alignment. You first have to understand that you haven't been harmed. Sometimes I know that, sometimes I forget. Going through the process to have the regular world take care of me physically moved me out of my spiritual understanding, yet that knowledge is still there. That connection is still there, even when you're not right in it at the moment. I'm where I was supposed to be at the moment. This will play out later in some way that will become apparent when I need to know it. And it's a matter of being able to trust that when universe drops it in my head, go see Lilian. There's a reason I've got to go see Lilian. This will unfold. I don't need to know why I need to go see Lilian. I just need to show up. And whether it's for my benefit or her benefit or both our benefits, it will unfold in front of us. And when you can trust that you're being guided and follow that guidance, you will find out that it unfolds for both of you as a benefit, not just one-sided. Trust. Trust. Forgive. And forgive yourself for your misperceptions.
Mm-hmm. Now oh, noise. Wow, we almost made the whole thing without noise. Now you're gonna go out. You're gonna go out and you're gonna send us lots of pictures.
Sure.
And you're gonna promise to come back after the trip.
Oh yes.
We're gonna do another interview. Hopefully by then my house is back to normal. I'm back to normal and my back is back to normal, whatever that means. Yeah. So I'm gonna thank you, and I don't care.
There's the bell.
Yes, the bell. Yeah. So anyway, so. Oh. Hang on, just a minute. There was Jungle Jim. He's a photographer from Los Angeles, and he got to say hello. And so we'll see you when you get back from your
journey.
Talk to you later.
Okay,
Thanks.
Great.
Bye. As we reviewed the footage from Carrie, we talked about it for a minute there, and Carrie suggested that I would read that article to you, the ones about multiple personality disorder. And the reason for that is some of you don't have internet and are not on my list for a newsletter. So I think I'm going to do this now. And I called it I Hear Hoofs, Who Goes There? We live in a world of texting and abbreviations. Second nature to some and hard to comprehend for others. DID and MPD are short words for something enormous. In fact, most people are unable to tell what it stands for. PTSD is an abbreviation which has been forced into our vocabulary because of the significant amount of people which have been afflicted. DID stands for Dissociative Identity Disorder. MPD stands for Multiple Personality Disorder. PTSD stands for Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder. The football player Herschel Walker released a book last month, Breaking Free. By doing so, he attempted to once again bring the subject to the forefront. 2020 showed a report about a woman which wrote a book, A Woman That Couldn't Forget, by Jill Price and Bart Davis. In 1997, I wrote a book, and the moral of the story is one person at a time. Each one of these accounts touch on, in a broad sense, what it is like to be somewhat different. So let me invite you into my world for a short time and tell you my story. In 1987, I was diagnosed with MPD. It was determined I had suffered from said disorder since I was 9 years old. Extreme DID or MPD is brought on by severe trauma, torture, or experimentation. It serves no purpose at this time for me to explain what this consisted of. Only that during this time my own survival mechanism found it necessary to create a path for me to survive certain occurrences. It created many compartmentalized files in my brain which are accessible by different parts of me, Lilian. Somehow the brain managed to put in place the unique ability to become a different person, or altogether, when it found it necessary to carry out a task. It was documented that even physical changes can occur. For example, during an eye exam, in which my sight changed from short-sighted in the left eye to far-sighted in the right eye to 20/20 vision in both eyes. Suffering from lifelong back problems and mild sclerosis, it was noted that during episodes I walked totally straight. Oftentimes, I have been unable to speak English. I'm multilingual, and sessions in other languages have been recorded by my therapist. Changes in style of dress, food, music, and physical activities are also common. There was a time when I had no recall of anything and unaware of lost time or my whereabouts. It was not unusual to be able to recall weeks. I jokingly call myself a holy person. because I'm unable to remember many parts of my life. It's not in my memory banks, only to resurface at other times. I'm unable to fill out paperwork which deals with facts, including but not limited to medical history, work history, or my whereabouts. Many times I have no or very vague recollection of my children. I do not babysit my grandchildren due to fear I don't know who they are. I recall an instance having taken a granddaughter skating. Not having skated in 20 years, I was concerned about falling and hurting myself. Somehow I became 8 years old, the time period when I was an excellent figure skater. And when it was time to go home, I asked the girl with me to please call her mother. I didn't know where we lived. I've made arrangements with my doctors to ask me how old I am before leaving their office. Anything less than 16 is reason for concern, because at that age I don't know how to drive. For almost 30 years I've had great therapists which taught me very patiently how to maneuver. There are no medications one can take. It takes hard work on a daily basis to navigate the maze which is my life. In recent times I had a therapist which, in my opinion, was not qualified and set me back in my learning process by 10 years. Each time after leaving his office I would find myself in unfamiliar places. After several hours I did regain control, enough to have friends help me find my way home. There were also times I would the next day find foreign foods in the refrigerator. No recollections where I bought them or how much money I spent. The lady at my bank would pay the check. Now this is in 2007 and 8, dated 1974. She notified me of the overdraft without charge, and a friend would have to come to my aid and cover the checks. Please keep in mind, while I, Lilian, have no recollection of many things, these other people occupy my body, are fully operational and function normally according to their standards. Lilian's brain just shifts to a different compartment and operates according to the memory file of that part of the brain. For those of you which remember an EP on LP record, along with the times your record skipped, after slightly tapping the record you may lose a fraction of a song you listen to, but the song would recover. Now picture a CD or DVD. As soon as there's any discrepancy, dirt, a scratch or malfunction, the disc will not be able to continue what you listen to. At best you can try a different player, which is usually of no avail. The only choice you have is to reboot and hope the disc will recover. It rarely does. With MPD, a person feels a scratch coming on. Sometimes with masterful skills, continued play is possible with a few bumps and skips. More often than not, the only course of action is to stop, separate from the situation and reboot. Each one of these disorders require a trigger. A trigger is something which tells the brain to access memories from a different time period. PTSD, in my opinion, creates vivid memories which play out like a video, transporting the person in the time period said memory was experienced and forces the experiencer to relive said instance. Did an MPD act different in as much as it forces the experiencer to shut down and leave, therefore totally switching the brain to an altered facilitator. With intense practice, after 30 years, I sometimes recognize when I'm scrambled. If I catch it in time, I'm able to maintain enough of my composure to stop that switch. Other times my skills let me down and I have to do the best I can after the fact. Example, a friend, Carrie Houston, the one we just talked to, owns a small aircraft. She offered to take me on a flight while I was writing this article, an almost impossible task. She called to tell me to come on, we were going to fly, and I said no. It was only the next day I was able to tell her that one of my other people loved skydiving, and I easily could have jumped out of her plane without a parachute. As far as we can tell, the persons which occupy my body are as follows. 1. A male in charge of logical decisions. 2. A small child, always afraid. 3. A young woman, terrified of riding as a passenger in cars. 3. a woman, creative and excellent painter. 4, male, prone to failure. 5, woman, brilliant in business and PR. 6, a woman, the mother and the defender. 7, woman, a social butterfly as well as a dancer, very popular with the opposite sex. And 8, the woman, the writer, researcher, very focused producer, director and host. And then there's me, Lilian. Non-denominational, wise, extremely psychic, happy, and a facilitator of all, which is me. Okay, it wasn't too bad. I'm unemployable since I'm unable to function at all, and when under stress I'm not able to control which part of my brain is going to be accessed and who takes charge of what needs to be addressed next. There was a time I would argue about events, things said, and attempts to explain why I could never have done or said what I was accused of, and search my memory for days to remember what people around me made reference to. I would have to actually recover physically, much as one has to after surgery. With time I learned that at running the risk of being called a liar, I just now answer with, "That's not my memory banks today, ask me again later. I may remember." So what do we need from people around us? And that is why I wrote this article. Most of us attempt to notify the people we have with which we have a close relationship. Family, select friends, and people we work with on a need-to-know basis. Healthcare providers should be notified, except there is no training other than how to deal with distraught people. In present time, that can be a life-threatening event for people like myself. Emergency personnel, ER personnel, and people not trained to allow a person like myself to gain control, at which time everything becomes so intensified. For example, I lived under occupation when I was small, and a few days after 9/11 I saw soldiers driving by. A police car followed, and for a moment I panicked. I realized I would not have been able to tell anyone my name, and I was on my way to therapy, and it was decided for me to wear a medical alert bracelet identifying me by name and to state I had MPD. When spoken to, I visualize everything a person tells me. Sometimes it takes a couple of seconds to answer, more than it would the average person. This is often mistaken for not answering or disinterest. The response of the person I'm conversing with can sometimes act as a trigger. Triggers are different for each person. In my case, it can be an odor, an event, a holiday, a sound, or the person I'm dealing with themselves, their tone of voice when speaking or questioning me. Picture yourself watching a TV program. You follow the storyline, and all of a sudden, someone behind you changes the channel. You have little or no objection, since you understand there are more people present than yourself. You get involved in a new storyline only to have the channel changed again and again and again, at which time you're dizzy. Your blood pressure and adrenaline rises. Your choice is to become confrontational or you leave. My eye movement will change when someone switches the channel, and I will always decide to walk away or to reboot. Unfortunately, even people we attempt to educate are not willing to afford us this luxury. In rare instances, people will deliberately create an instant to switch me in order to accomplish an agenda which is not in my interest. A law was passed in the 90s to charge people with a crime if they are aware of a person's diagnosis and create a situation in which sexual favors are involved. The charge is rape. The suggestion of calling 911 for help doesn't serve a purpose, inasmuch as a person such as myself is not able to explain to an untrained person what the problem is. It only intensifies the situation. And then that will add panic to the equation. If I was able to explain my dilemma, I could reboot and fix myself. What we need is tolerance. It's almost more important than understanding. Even people aware of the situation forget or do not want to deal with an episode. They take things personal and are unable to recognize something isn't right. At that critical moment, do not offer an aspirin or any medical solution. There is no pill. We need a clear mind and the luxury of composing ourselves. When the episode is over, do not ask questions or try to reconstruct what happened. This is only going to relay the recovery from that incident. And often there's no memory about what happened. Do not take things personal. Do not baby that person. Stand down. Do not exaggerate the event or outright lie. And I live by myself, so each room is decorated in a different theme. I can tell my frame of mind by which room I spend my time in. I create myself a focus point, and I do well when traveling because it is not necessary for me to explain myself since I'm only in a place a very short time, and I do things at my own pace. I ask to be reminded of appointments. I do one thing at a time each week, so I know what at least once a week I'll return home. Unfortunately, there are many people which are not able to maneuver in this fashion. They live with others. They may not be skilled as I have become after 30 years. They may not even know that something is wrong, which prevents them from functioning properly. My hope is that more education will be available to all of us, especially since so many people now have at least PTSD. So close your eyes, you hear hooves. You assume, no, you know, just you hear a horse. Now open your eyes. It's a zebra. And with that, we leave you for today until next week. Come see us again. Have a great week and bye-bye.